Have you ever had something happen in your life that was so bad and just continued to be so bad it was almost funny? Anything shouldn't be that bad, and you start laughing at your own bad luck or whatever it is you're going through. There's one of these instances in the United States Navy. It's a destroyer called the USS William D. Porter. I want to introduce that ship to you because this ship is associated with such bad luck. It's almost like the Bad News Bears destroyer of the U.S. Naval Fleet. And so let's take a look at this ship. The USS William D. Porter and its crew had a record of just being a wrecking ball. They had wrecked a sister ship with its anchor. They had friendly fired another ship of the fleet, and then at one point they accidentally shot a live round into the base commander's front yard, and just bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. But that is nothing compared to the fact that the USS William D. Porter almost destroyed our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It was in 1943. The ship, along with 3 other destroyers, had been assigned to guard the USS Iowa. And the USS Iowa was the ship that carried FDR and the Secretary of State, Cordell Hull. They were en route to the Tehran and Cairo conference on the other side of the world. And during that trip, there was a major scare that took place when one of the depth charges that were on the ship fell overboard and exploded, causing everybody to think that they had been found by U-boats. Because remember, this is 1943, right entrenched in the middle of the World War II with Germany, and Germany was plowing through all the oceans trying to sink anything they could get their hands on. And so when this depth charge went off at the side of the boat, everybody thought it was a U-boat had found them. The Germans were upon us and upon our president. And after the incident, the crew, in doing some drills, trying to prepare and make sure they weren't being targeted by anybody, in a training exercise, inadvertently sent off a torpedo straight at the USS Iowa. And right at the last moment, the USS Iowa was able to move that great big old boat just catty-corner out of the way and barely missed by this torpedo. Just incident after incident after incident. The William D. Porter would go on and have a great time of service in the Philippines and Okinawa, and had a great record, but her end was just as strange as her life. On June the 10th, 1945, a kamikaze plane, Japanese plane, was coming in, and the William D. Porter shot her out of the sky. When the plane came down, it hit the water, and as it dove under the water, it went literally under the boat and exploded, and ripping a hole in the bottom of the boat, sunk the boat. She shot down the plane. The plane went underwater, blew the boat up, and it sank. And fortunately, they didn't lose any lives. Everybody was safe. But how often does something like that happen? When you look at stuff like this with this boat, the USS William D. Porter, bad thing after bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. You can't blame that on lack of structural integrity in the boat. You can't blame that on maybe just a drunk sailor. All of that stems back to leadership. Good or bad, everything rises and falls, as John Maxwell says, Christian leadership guru. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And with this ship, it's no different. That all of its success and all of its failure, the whole crew has to come together, but it all falls squarely on top of the shoulders of leadership. Who you follow will play a great part of your life, for better or for worse. And if you're a leader, if you're not a good leader, you're leading people into some very bad places. In the Christ life, we have to be careful who we allow to be our leader. That's why it's so important. Don't go into an election unless you have prayed. You vote for how God leads you to, not what makes sense in your own mind. You go according to God's plan. That's how we are in the Christ life, is we follow God in every step of our life. And by living for God, we got to be careful of who we allow to lead us, even in the pastoring a church. But then those of us that are leaders, we have to be careful, because when you're in the Christ life long enough, there'll be people that'll come in behind you. They're new in the faith and you've been at it a while. You're now, by virtue, you're a leader to them, and they're going to follow you. Numbers chapter 27 talks to us dealing with the issue of leadership. This is at the time of Moses is going to pass away. Joshua is going to step out and become the leader, and because God chose him. And in Numbers 27, starting in verse 18, it says this, "And the Lord said to Moses, Take Joshua the son of Nun with you, a man in whom is the Spirit." I like how the New International Version reads this. It says, "In whom is the Spirit of leadership. Take this man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him, and set him before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation, and inaugurate him in their sight. And you shall give some of your authority to him, and that all of the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. And he, Joshua, shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire before the Lord for him by the judgment of the Urim. And at his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in, and all the children of Israel with him, all the congregation." So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and he laid his hands on him and inaugurated him just as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. God chose a man who had been a servant. He had served Moses when Moses was inside the tent talking with God. It says that Joshua stood outside the tent and kept guard. Joshua has served and served and served and served and served because he found a good leader. But now it came time for him to lead. God called him to leadership. God doesn't call those that are qualified. He qualifies those whom he calls. And so God called Joshua and said, I want him to be, not because he has all these gifts and talents, but because the Spirit is in him. And I really like how, like I said, how the NIV says it, the spirit of leadership. Let me encourage you with this, is that good or bad, everything will boil down to leadership. Leadership in your marriage, leadership in your family, leadership with your children, leadership in your business, leadership in your church. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So be a good leader. Be a good servant, a good follower to those that are in leadership over you. Make sure that those that you follow are good leaders. Pray for them. Before you start whining and complaining about those that are in leadership over you, pray for them first. Pray for them first. And then when you are a leader, remember that you're not going to lead because of your great wisdom, your beautiful looks, your wealth that you have at your disposal. You're a good leader because the Spirit of the living God is inside of you. Though you may not feel qualified, in times I don't. And I wonder, God, why did you call me to lead this wonderful people that you've given me to? It's not because of what I have or what you have. It's because God has His Spirit inside of us. He has us. And because He has us, He can work with us, and He can use us and help us to be at the right place at the right time, doing the right things, saying the right words that make a difference. Follow God. Be led by God. Lead with distinction. God bless you. Have a great, great day.